Hi, I'm Susanna Bowling, and this is live from the Hotel Edison Times Square Chronicles Presents. I'm very excited about my two guests today because they have done amazing things both on Broadway, in national tours, in regional theater, TV, film. The first one is a playwright and a performer. She was involved with Rocktopia and Wicked. She also has written a brand new play called The Opposite of Love. We're talking Ashley Griffin.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. So happy to be here.
Thank you. Tell us a little bit about your play.
Well, The Opposite of Love is a two-hander drama that I've been working on for a while, and it was originally supposed to go off Broadway in the fall of 2020, and we all know how that turned out. It was great. But I'm very fortunate that we have wonderful producers. I'm working with the wonderful Geo Waxenberg and New York Rep, who have been such champions of the piece and really fighting for it to come to fruition, and we're finally able to have it open off Broadway, and it's a piece that's very near and dear to my heart, and I'm so happy and honored that it's finally getting to be seen by everybody.
Now, you're also the playwright as well as one of the performers. How does that work?
Well, it's something that when it's the right thing, I really enjoy doing. I've done it throughout my career. When I was 6 years old, my dream was to be the first female Anthony Newley, so that kind of sums me up. But when it's the right thing, I really love it, and I've gotten good at it. I'm really good at separating the two sides, so I can just be the actor, and then the playwright can be invited in the room when they need to be. But I really enjoy it. There's a long history of writers being in their own work, and it's something really special that I really love doing.
So was it Stop the World, I Want to Get Off, or War of the Grease Paint, The Smell of the Crowd?
It was specifically his performance of Who Can I Turn To on the Ed Sullivan Show. My mom got me the DVD of old Ed Sullivan Show performances, and I saw that, and it had a tremendous impact on me. And then I'm a little Hermione Granger. The teachers gave me that nickname in school. That also sums me up. And I went and did a bunch of research and found out that he was the first person in history nominated for Tonys for performer, book of a musical, and score for the same show in the same year. And that's what I wanted to do.
It's funny that you mentioned him because when I was a teenager, I actually performed in a tribute to Anthony Newley and Leslie Bricusse at the Lady in LA.
That's amazing.
So,
Yeah.
and I know. My next guest is Danny Gardner, who has wowed me time and time again, both in Flying Over Sunset and also Dames at Sea. He's known for tap dancing, but in this play, it's straight acting.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
So happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm in love with your performances. I think the last thing I saw you in was Cheek to Cheek at New York.
Yeah, that was such a joy, and a great producing team, a great theater to be back at the York, and Randy's choreography is just so wonderful to perform.
It's joyous.
Yes.
It's a joyous kind of tribute back to another time.
Yeah, and it feels good too. You know, when you're doing it, he knows when it doesn't feel good, and so when we're choreographing, or when he's choreographing, and he says, oh, let's change that, and as soon as he changes it, oh, there it was. You know, it feels like walking.
Between musical theater and tap dancing, and straight plays, and film, and TV, where does your heart lie?
I think I've always been a live performer. I started tap dancing very young, when I was 6. And so that has always been a part of my life. And that was only 20 years ago. So it's always been a part of my life. But I find that it's the dance, and because you're making music as you tap dance, it's really helped me with straight acting. And the rhythm and the feel of where lines lie and how they're to be said. And, you know, Chris Walken was a hoofer back in the day. He still is. But it's funny how I've seen some interviews where he says, you know, he tap dances some of his lines to figure out where does that accent have to happen there. And so I think it's all combined, but tap dance has always been very close to my heart.
You know, it makes a lot of sense to me because there's a cadence and a rhythm. And in a strange way, it's almost like speaking. if you get it right.
Yes, absolutely. When I teach tap dance, I always talk about finding the melody. It's not just monotone. I like to say we have a whole drum set on our feet. You have the hi-hat, you have the bass drum, all of that, and finding the ups and downs. And I even talk about sentences, especially in, for example, Randy's choreography, there's beginning, middle, end of each step. And finding that really helps with not only tap dance, but then acting and performing as a whole.
But you also have those little steps in between.
Exactly.
So it's nuances, it's new ways to say something.
Exactly. And it really is, finding the pattern, as they say, of the acting, but then also the tap dance. It always amazes me how similar it really is.
Now, how did you get involved in the Opposite of Love?
Through Ashley. She contacted me. We've been friends for a while now, and she's had some other projects that I've worked on. And she asked me to do a reading of it about 2 years ago at Theatre Row, and we worked on it. And there was a prologue and epilogue that's now kind of been taken out, and it's been so meaningful to me to not only work on it but stay with it, because that can be very unique sometimes. And it's a really beautiful, hard piece.
Ashley, what made you write it?
Oh, that's a long question. I actually started writing this play when I was in college, and not meaning anything disparaging about what I'm about to say, but I realized that I wasn't a good enough writer to write it yet. And it came about because sort of entering the world of the adult dating scene, I was seeing a lot of things that were not just frustrating, but deeply disturbing to me, both in my own experiences and in the experiences of the people around me. And I felt like it was a lot of things that weren't being talked about and were kind of behind closed doors, and we were all feeling but no one was saying. And I wanted to address those things. And I didn't feel like, I was like, I'm not good enough to do this quite yet. And so I put it away, and then I went on and fortunately started having a very successful career as a writer-performer in New York. And what I discovered my niche sort of is, and what I've been most well known for as a writer, is very much in magical realism and heightened language, which I love doing. And so one of the reasons that I wanted to bring Opposite back out is it's neither of those things. It's like, great, so that's your comfort zone, so let's do something that's not that. And this is a straight play in pretty much real time, no magical realism, no heightened language at all. And I felt like I had gotten to the point where I could do justice to it. And I'm a very fast writer. I write most things in about 9 days, so I wrote it in about a week. And my feelings about it had sort of only deepened as time went on, but the essence of what I had always conceived for it is still there.
It's funny that you say that, because I just saw an interview with Kelly O'Hara and Brian D'Arcy James on Days of Wine and Roses. And that show was conceived 20 years ago, but she wasn't ready to do the show. And neither was he. And as they put it, there needed to be more traction on the tires. So I can see how that would be. What has changed in the piece from when you started it to now?
Well, the very, very first original conception, it was meant to be a four-hander, and it was meant to sort of explore these elements of relationships through the different people interacting with each other. And the biggest initial change that I made was to pare it down to just a two-hander, so it's just the relationship between these two people. And after that, in all honesty, not a ton has changed. I've trimmed it, as you tend to do. And originally there was a bit of a prologue and an epilogue where we got to see Will sort of in his own space alone, that in the development with Danny, we discovered didn't really need to be there. But other than that, it hasn't really changed a lot since I actually wrote the draft of it.
Wow. Okay, Danny, what of yourself do you bring to this role?
The incredible vulnerability that Will, the character I play, has to get to. That's the thing that I understood first, and I think that was my way into the character. And then it's almost like putting layers on top of that. The bravado that he has in the first scene, and the control, and then in the second scene he's a little bit more. He's playing the almost older brother, let's get to know each other, and it's amazing that at the end it just keeps falling, the pieces and the act keep falling to the side until we finally get to see Will at the end of, well, the fourth scene, and then it takes in scene 5, takes a different turn. But I think the vulnerability and the sweet boyishness of Will and the way he's had to act manly, or in so many different ways, in so many facets of his life. But that's where I kind of got in.
I'm not sure who to ask this next question to, so I'm asking it to you both. In this world, it seems that men run from relationships out of fear. How much of that is in this play?
Oh, that's a good question. And the thing is, I think that this play deals with a lot of very complicated layers about how relationships work in general now. That's probably an aspect. I don't know if it's the central aspect that we're exploring, but we sort of delve into everything from the expectations of hookup culture to the desire for intimacy and not finding it, to having dealt with trauma and having wildly different experiences of that, from it being something that very much informs how you go through life to something that you don't even conceive of as trauma. And also the fact that we very much frequently don't communicate with each other about what we want and what our needs are. And there's a line that Eloise has about that it feels like dating is sort of like the audition process of dating. That you sort of get through the audition process, you hopefully get chosen, and then maybe down the line you get to actually know the human being. And that's something that I have issues with and I'm not super comfortable with. So fleeing from relationships out of fear, I think, is an element, but I think it kind of explores the wide range of all the complicated things that are going on.
When you said that, all I could think of is the chorus line with all the people and their pictures and resumes going, God, I hope I get
Well,
it.
it's not that dissimilar to certain dating sites. I mean, forgive the crassness, but Eloise has a line of, apps where the first requirement is that they want to fuck you before they even agree to meet you. It kind of feels like a chorus line of let's flip through the headshots. Oh, they're hot. Maybe I'll talk to them. And I'm not saying that there's necessarily anything wrong with that, but when you combine it with everything else that's going on, it can make for a very difficult and complex situation, especially when you're looking for an actual connection with someone.
I think in this day and age, we're taught that that's how we're supposed to think.
Yeah.
And I think that's disgusting.
Yeah. I would agree with you. Yeah.
Danny, your thoughts?
You're like, I disagree.
Well, it is funny. In the first scene specifically, Will feels like he has to be a certain way, a man that she will want. And I think as the play goes on, he unexpectedly opens up about a lot of things that he didn't know he had felt at the time they happened. And I think by the end, he has really opened himself up to a point that he's never been to. And in that respect, it's the tragic combination of, if she hadn't almost made him, he wouldn't have. And so he wouldn't have gone there and asked those questions and fallen in love in that way. And that's the tragedy of it, that someone else had to say, no, you need to sit down and talk, and that's going to further you as a human. And so I think that's the hard part. There's the rub.
You actually made me want to see this play. Does it have a happy ending?
It
I'm
has an
sorry,
ending.
but I like to know the happy endings at the end.
I'm going to say no, but it feels like the ending that needs to happen.
The piece has been described as if Pretty Woman was a Black Mirror episode sans tech. And I feel like that is very accurate. Somebody was commenting on the show and basically says, whatever way you think it's going, you're wrong.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I would very much agree with that idea of it's not necessarily the Pretty Woman ending, but it's the ending that needs to happen.
I don't know. I like happy endings. No, seriously, after Schindler's List, no, not Schindler's List. Sophie's Choice.
Oh.
After Sophie's Choice,
Yeah.
I wanted to know the endings of everything
Yeah.
because I did not want to see that again.
Well, next time I'll try to bring you a happy.
I think we need happy endings right now.
Yeah, I think so. I think the combination, the mix of having happy endings and then having things that make us leave the theater questioning and feeling and in a sense raw, because dating and love and relationships are raw in a new way in today's climate. And I think having that, it may not be the ending, but it makes you find your own ending and how you feel about it.
Yeah, well, along with that, when I'm writing, I always think of the audience as another character in the show.
Yeah.
And I very much track what information they know at any given point, what their experience, it's very important.
Smart.
And because the whole point of doing this is as a gift for the audience. I mean, that's why we
It
do
should
it. It should be. And so if there is a happy ending to the show, what I like to think of it as is that this is potentially a cautionary tale. And the happy ending is we can now look at these things and we can talk about them and think about them. And we don't then have to go out and live this. That's potentially what the
I
happy
love
ending
that.
is.
No, I'm a firm believer that if I've gone through something bad, I want to tell people so they don't have to go through it either. So I'm a big believer in this.
Yeah, well, and also the play ends, the last moment of the play is on a question that doesn't quite get answered. So I always love giving the audience that moment of, well, what do you think just happened and why do you think that? And then that's something that you can sort of take home and explore and can start further conversations.
I think right now you're in the zeitgeist of what plays we're seeing right now. You've got Mother Play, it does the same thing. Appropriate, same thing. Prayer for the French Republic. I mean, everything that you've seen this year, there is that question of what if? And I think you're definitely on the zeitgeist.
Well, thank you.
What haven't you written that you would like to write?
I'm probably not the best person to ask that question. I'm very prolific and I write very fast. So I have a wide canon and if there's something that I feel passionate about doing, I just do it because I love it. I mean, for me, writing and getting to do my craft is like recess, and I am very aware that I'm very privileged to be a writer because it's one of the only artistic ventures that you don't have to get permission to do. As an actor, you can work on your craft all you want, but at some point you kind of have to have somebody else give you the opportunity to do it. But as a writer, I can write anytime, anywhere, any place, and feel very artistically fulfilled, and I don't take that for granted. And so I love it, so I definitely do it. So kind of everything that I would want to write, I either have or I'm in the process of.
I'm going to push back for a minute.
Okay.
As a writer, don't you also have to deal with the director and the producers and the people that you want to put on your play?
Oh, no, definitely. And you certainly need other people, unless you're independently wealthy, you need other people to help you put it up. But as a writer, there are sort of two parts to exercising your craft. And part of it is what you do in a solitary place by yourself. And I also have 2 novels that have been published, and obviously I needed a publisher, but that was completely created independently by me in my room. And that's part of the creation process that I really love, and it's one of the only artistic ventures where you can do that. And then yes, to do the second part of that, which I also adore and love, is being in the room and developing it and making it live for people. And that absolutely, but you do sort of get that first part that I feel very lucky and privileged to be able to do.
Let's help publicize you. What are your novels?
I have 2 novels out. One is called The Spindle. It is a retelling of Sleeping Beauty from the Dark Fairy's point of view, but set firmly in the Celtic world, around the sort of Arthurian legends. And it actually, in some ways, is a prequel to my off-Broadway play Snow. It plays off of some of the mythology in that. So a lot of my friends joke that there's the Griffin cinematic universe, and it's an accurate statement. And my second novel is called Blank Page, spelled P-A-I-G-E. And it actually originally started as a web series and then a pilot that's in development, but it's very literary based, and it takes place in an ethereal bookstore where all of the employees are fictional characters who haven't been written yet, and they have to wait for their author to show up to claim them. And this new girl named Paige shows up and is the first character ever to not know her genre or story, and it causes everybody to start to question how much free will they have over their own lives. So that's actually really one of the first pieces that I started creating, but it's just now that the novel version has come to fruition, and I'm very fortunate that they were both published a year from each other, and they're both out now.
I have to say, I'm really glad that I asked that question. Pat Addis took me to see snow. I saw snow.
Oh my goodness, wait, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And Pat Addis on my play trial, I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
That's one of my best friends.
Oh my goodness, she's amazing. Which production of Snow did you see? Did you see it when it was new?
Downtown.
Oh, okay, yeah. The first one that we
Yeah.
did. That's a piece that's very, very near and dear to my heart.
But you write things that I actually want to read and or see.
Oh, good.
I used to collect all the fairy tale books, all the colored fairy tale books.
Oh my goodness, yeah, don't get me started, I have them all memorized.
Yes.
I annoy people to no end.
No, I know them. And so, no, you won't annoy me. Wait, were you a big fan of Once Upon a Time?
Oh, don't get me started on Once Upon a Time. The short answer is, with the exception of a couple episodes, for me, I thought the first season of Once Upon a Time was one of the greatest seasons of television I've ever seen.
I did.
I feel like it didn't necessarily maintain that level as it went on, but.
Sadly, no. Except for the guy that played Robin Hood.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, Robert Carlyle, I mean, the comedic work that he was doing as Rumpelstiltskin is extraordinary.
Oh,
That episode, the two episodes, The Price of Gold and then the Belle and Rumpel one that Jane Espenson wrote. It's brilliant. I mean, Jane Espenson is a genius and she was on Buffy and she's brilliant, so. I'm Hermione Granger, I'm a little annoying, so.
No, I totally, there's a part of me that is so this.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
honestly, when I write, and I write novels and things.
yeah.
It's one of the things I write.
Yeah.
So I completely get it.
But it's fun with this piece because there's no magical realism. I managed to slip in a reference to Peter Pan because it's me and I had to. But other than that, there's no fairy tales or any of that. And it was really fun for me to be like, great, that's a comfort zone. That's something that you love. Let's take that away. And yeah.
I have something to share with you. Have you seen Alchemy of Souls yet on
No,
Network?
not yet.
Go to Netflix and watch Alchemy of Souls. I spent all Memorial Day weekend watching
Nice.
this thing.
Nice.
Danny, I'm sorry I didn't mean to leave you out.
Not a problem, no.
Start out with a very interesting question.
Yeah.
If you were to be a fairy tale character, who would you be?
I think I would want to be, well, you just mentioned it, but Robin Hood. I think that, yeah, I've always, maybe not. I've never stolen anything from anyone, but that
But you'd like to
mentality.
give back.
Yes, I'd like to give back, yes. Yeah, that's who I'd like to be, who I actually am. I don't know, maybe.
I'd buy that, go with that.
Yeah?
I would.
Okay, all right.
Unless you want to be Sir John.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
And a snake.
Well, that's a funner
Yeah.
role.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that would be.
What roles haven't you gotten to do that you'd like to take on?
I'd love to do The Baker in Into the Woods, and I've always loved Sunday in the Park. It's one of my favorite shows. I discovered it in college at a very specific time, and I just listened to the album over and over. So George has always been a great role for me. I've always wanted to do. I've never done anything of those.
Really?
What is it, Billy Crocker?
Yeah, Crocker.
Yeah. I've always wanted to do that. I'm actually going to play the purser in Anything Goes at the Muni. But yeah, I've never done, all the other ones I've pretty much done, like Crazy for You, Singing in the Rain. Oh, I've never done Cosmo, Singing in the Rain. I've always done Don, and I'd
What
love
about
to do
Some
that.
Like It Hot?
Oh my gosh, yes. When my wife and I, her family was in town and we went to see it, and it was fantastic. And she very kindly said, well, you have to play that role. And I said, yes, I agree.
I think you
So,
can play that role.
I'd love to play that role. And it's so smart, and the choreography is so good, and it's, everything about the production was so much fun, it was really well done. And I would love to do that someday.
I'd also like to see you do something else.
Yeah.
Floyd Collins.
Oh, that show is...
I want to do Floyd Collins.
Yeah, that, I would be honored to play that. Yeah, that show is so... Well, that's one where the ending is, it's... I mean,
He dies, but
yeah,
Yeah,
I mean
but
how Gloria
well, we're
goes.
talking to me
Yeah.
now, but death is not always an unhappy ending.
that's
No,
true. That's
yeah.
very
I
true.
agree.
That's
I mean,
true.
Death is a character in Snow, who I love very much, so. And is probably the protagonist of The Spindle, so, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, last question. What haven't I asked you that you would like our audiences to know?
Go with me.
Okay, you're ready to be first.
what would I write if I were going to write a piece? And I would love to, I've been working on it, intermittently, but I'd love to write a piece about my family and, somehow incorporate tap dance into it. Because tap dance has always been such a part of my life, and to tell like my mom and dad and their kind of, grandparents' stories and things like that, and how it was always a musical family, and to grow up in such a musical, not performance family, but like both my parents were teachers. So there was an aspect of performance that they had to be aware of. But I'd love to create a piece about them and the little town of Reading, PA, where I came from.
I can think of 2 other shows you should write.
Yeah?
One on the life of Bobby Van,
Uh,
and the other on Gene Kelly.
Yeah, my friend Drew Humphrey and I actually wrote a cabaret show about Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly, and about their how they started in vaudeville and then Broadway and then movies, and it was a lot of fun. And I actually love doing research, and so I would love to write both of those.
I could see you in them.
Yeah.
And I've had the privilege of reading some of the things that Dan has written, and he's very, very talented.
But what haven't I asked you that you'd like us to know?
Well, I realized that we haven't actually told anybody what the show's about.
Do you want to give that away?
Well, I don't want to give away the ending, but people might like to know the general idea of what it's about.
Your floor.
Great. So it's a 2-hander, full-length, 1-act play, and it follows 2 characters, Eloise and Will. And Eloise is a trust fund baby who has been molested by her uncle from a very young age, and the one line that was never crossed was actual sex or intercourse. And she has been trying to find a loving, intimate relationship and has been coming up short. And so in her words, she feels like she needs to get over herself and just do it and then function in the way in society that she feels like she's supposed to. So she hires Will, who's a down-on-his-luck hustler, to take her virginity. And their first encounter does not go well, but he realizes that she is a potential cash cow and is basically like, why don't I come back every week and we can just talk? And so the crux of the show is following them through a series of their encounters and what happens between the 2 of them when they talk about the fact that they end up being unexpected, 2 sides of the same coin, and then there's a twist at the end that takes it in a very different direction. It's an intimate piece, it's a vulnerable piece, and it's something that I think pretty much, unfortunately, everybody over the age of 18 can relate to. And I think it talks about things that I haven't seen talked about or explored in other works. So hopefully it can fill a void that's there. And if you ever felt that you relate to any of the things that we've been talking about, this is a show for you.
I have to ask the question. I hope I'm not stepping over the line, but I ask because I come from knowledge of it. Do you talk about how people that are very rich are molested by somebody in their family?
It's not, there's no focus specifically on this being a problem that specifically affects rich people. It actually comes out that Will also has trauma in his background as well. I think more the way that the wealth and trauma interact for Eloise is sort of the sense that she has had her family sort of buy their way out of everything, and this is something that you don't talk about, you just shut up about, and you toe the party line. And there's an interaction where she's asked Will if she goes back and sees his family. He's basically like, no, not really. And he reciprocates the question, and she says, yeah, I wish I could get away with that, but I'm obligated to put in an appearance. Everything comes with a price. And the idea that she still has to toe the party line in order to be taken care of. So it's not that trauma is specifically linked to wealth, it's more that trauma is kind of linked as something that more people experience than we realize, but a lot of people feel that they need to shut up about.
No, the reason I ask the question is because people think if you're rich, oh, you must have this wonderful life. But most people that I grew up with, nope, we were all molested.
Yeah, yeah,
And I mean,
no.
most people know this about me because I'm not afraid to talk about it.
And I'm so sorry that you went through that.
No, don't be, because there's something that you grow from and that you learn. I mean, the national statistics are 1 in 3 females, 1 in 4 males.
Right.
And my guess is it's even more in males because they talk less.
Well, that was an interesting, it's really interesting when you're a writer, and especially if you're in your own work, there tends to be this assumption that you really over-identify with whatever character you're playing. And I mean, certainly any artist, you know, they bring elements of themselves to anything that they create. But the thing that I always remind people of is like, I wrote Will too. And in all my pieces, I write all of the characters. And yeah, and for Will, the truth of the matter is most of the men in my life that I love and care about have shared some sort of story about that with me. And it breaks my heart and it makes me so sad and angry. And there's already a feeling in general of sort of not always being able to talk about this, but I think especially for men. And it makes me so angry and so heartbroken. And so that's one of the reasons that it was really important for me to talk about that from both sides.
I agree. That's why I had to ask the
Yeah.
question. I mean, I always manage to ask the questions. People are like, "Oh my God, we should go."
No, I think it's important, and I mean, I'm writing material and dealing with material that is meant to bring up these conversations. I'm very happy to talk about it, and I think that it needs to be. So,
I agree, which is why I do it.
yeah,
I actually wrote a book called A Child's Heart, where all the artwork is done by people that have been molested. So, yeah, I'm a firm believer that this needs to be talked about it. As for the people that were victims, hey, we didn't cause this. We just have to live with it.
yeah. Well,
So-
and Danny brought up a really beautiful thing to me one day that we know, but it was really it meant a lot to me to be reminded of it, of the idea that, you know, part of our job as artists is to talk about the things and experience the things that not everybody can. And especially this piece, it's a very vulnerable piece, it's a scary piece to do, and you know, there's a lot of bravery that we're both throwing into it, and it's nice to remember that that's, you know, part of our calling as artists is because not everybody can go there and talk about it and explore it, and so we're the ones that are sort of up there, and we're gonna take one for the team in a way and jump out and do the brave thing and do it.
Bravo. Seriously, bravo. Danny, do you want to add anything before we close this up?
I think that was beautifully said, and I'm just honored to be a part of it and bringing it to life every night.
And I do want to throw out, because you asked Danny how he got involved in the show, I just
Yes.
want to add, because I can. I have known Danny for a while, and we are very good friends, and we have worked together on development. Danny's an extraordinary artist, and he's obviously very well known for musical theater and tapping, and he's second to none. I'm going to go out on a limb. Come for me. I'm going to say that he's the best tapper working in New York City right now. And he's great, but he can do an enormous amount of things. And this Will is a really difficult role to cast. It was really hard to cast it. And when I was talking to the producers and we were trying to figure out who to bring in for this reading, I know that Danny can do anything because I've seen him do it. And so I was like, you know, I know this is an out-of-the-box choice, but what about Danny Gardner? And they went and they looked at his website and they called me back and they're like, no, we trust you, but you know that most of his website is tapping. I'm like, yeah, I know. So I called Danny and he very generously offered to put himself on tape. And he did a wonderful job. And then he came in and he like threw down. Like it was mic drop from moment one. And I hope, A, that this can be an opportunity for people to see additional beautiful, extraordinary things that he can do. But I hope that one of the things that I feel great responsibility in being a writer and being on the other side of the table is I'm very aware that I have a certain power that you don't have when you're, I don't mean just an actor as anything disparaging, but when your role is simply to be an actor. And I don't take that responsibility lightly because I know what it's like to be on all sides. And so I hope that this can also be an inspiration that just because you've seen somebody do something very well, it doesn't mean that that is all they can do. And a lot of times when you're casting, it can be very easy to be like, oh, we need this, they're that, they've done the thing a million times, great. But sometimes you can get something just that is so spectacular and special and wonderful that you never would have gotten if you didn't really look at a human being and take a chance on somebody. I'm so very thankful that the producers saw what I saw and were supportive of that, and then I was able to have the power to put Danny forward in that way, and hopefully that it can be an influence on all those other things too.
So all I can think of right now is don't put Danny in the box.
Nobody puts Danny in a corner.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
No, don't, but, you know, when I was performing, I looked a certain way and everybody wanted me to be soft and sweet and innocent. And I'm like, wait, no.
Yeah.
So I know the feeling.
No, and it's such a pleasure and an honor to get to do this piece and flex those muscles and, you know, really dive in a way that I haven't gotten to in a while. So it's really rewarding.
And tell us when The Opposite of Love is playing.
The Opposite of Love is playing now. We had our first preview yesterday. We officially open tomorrow, and we are running through June 15th. We have a Wednesday through Sunday schedule, Wednesday through Saturday at 7 p.m. and Sunday at, thank you, at 3 p.m. I just show up when they tell me to show up. And it's running through June 15th, and we are very much hoping and are in talks for a future life for it as well.
Thank you so much for being with me. This show always surprises me. I'm never sure what's going to come out of it. And if I just let it flow, it becomes this amazing thing that I'm super proud of. And I'm proud of today's episode. I would like to thank Magda Katz for being here and always being here for us and videoing and making us sound good. I would like to thank Rommel and the Hotel Edison because they make my life amazing. The Edison Hotel, for some reason I always want to improve this. And I'm Susanna Bowling. This is live from the Hotel Edison. Times Square Chronicles presents. And I want to say, if you have a new play, and it doesn't matter where you're from, go to the International Playwriting Festival. You can have your play read, seen, and if you win, you get a production in New York. Thank you so much.